morning. It is Tuesday, February 10th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, President Putin travels to Egypt as Western leaders discuss East Ukraine options. A new Islamic State propaganda video shows captive journalist John Cantley touring Aleppo. And later on the show, with the BAFTAs, Film Awards season hits its stride. We'll take a closer look. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi, and we begin with the crisis in the Ukraine. As Russian and Western diplomats struggle to reach a peace deal over the spiraling conflict in the Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin has flown to Cairo in a move nominally aimed at bolstering bilateral ties with Egypt, but one that also allows both him and Egyptian leader al-Sisi to send a pointed message to the United States. And the day before the resumption of Ukraine peace talks in Minsk, Putin is expected today to hold discussions in Cairo about ending the use of the U.S. dollar in bilateral trade between Egypt and Russia. Collaboration between a Russian and Egyptian newspaper is also reported to be scheduled for discussion. Analysts believe both sides, though interested in forming stronger relations, primarily seek to signal to the international community that their foreign policies are not to be dictated by others. In Putin's case, that may be a message that was not received by United States President Barack Obama, who in a joint conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel yesterday did not hold back when he said the international community cannot stand idle, to quote him, and allow Europe's borders to be redrawn with the barrel of a gun. Now, as the conflict in the Ukraine shows no sign of abating, we're going to try and make sense of it all. And joining me in studio this morning is Dr. Sarah Feinberg. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
You're a lecturer at the Center for European Studies at the IDC and a research fellow at the INSS. But before we break it down, let's take a look at the latest from the Ukraine and break it down from there.
This is not how Egypt intended to welcome Russian President Vladimir Putin. A day before Putin's landmark visit to Cairo, more than 19 people died in confrontation with the police at a soccer game in Cairo. Most of the victims suffocated when the crowd stampeded after police used tear gas to clear fans who tried to rush into the stadium, where two Cairo clubs were playing in the Egyptian League. This severe incident comes only 10 days after a wave of terror swept the Sinai Peninsula, causing dozens of casualties. This is the first visit to Egypt by a Russian president since the Mubarak administration was toppled in 2011. Russia and Egypt are considered close allies, and the connection between the two countries became even stronger after Abdel Fattah el-Sisi became Egyptian president in 2014, a move that changed the entire region and shook the long-lasting ties between Egypt and the US. Last year, Russia and Egypt reached a preliminary arms deal worth $3.5 billion.
Bilateral ties between Russia and Egypt are old, in particular in military areas, and this was discussed by the Russian defense minister with his Egyptian counterpart yesterday.
During the two-day visit, Putin and al-Sisi will discuss such topics as the violence engulfing the Middle East and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But perhaps both leaders will have to face the challenges closer to their respective homes: growing violence and terrorism in Egypt and the ongoing fighting in eastern Ukraine.
Also joining us on the phone from Cairo is I-24 News contributor Jacob Burchafter. Jake, good morning to you. I would like to start with actually what's on the agenda today, what's on the so-called, performed agenda for the rest of the world to watch when it comes to the meetings between Putin and Sisi in Cairo this morning.
Okay, we won't know specifics until the joint press conference later today, but official sources say that it's the intensified fighting in Libya, the civil war in Syria, and the moribund Palestinian-Israeli diplomacy track that are topping the agenda. And there's some real alignment here between Russian and Egyptian concerns. I mean, in Libya, the rival factions have gone to Moscow, some to Kiev, seeking political support and ammunition and repairs for their Soviet-era weapons. And the Russians have been approached by members of the Assad, but still regard in some circles here in Cairo as professional Libyan officer corps. And Putin might be checking in with Sisi today on stabilizing the situation in Libya in ways that would be mutually beneficial. And you know that Egypt is also worried about the flow of arms from Islamist groups in Libya to the militants in the Sinai. So then we've got Syria. And there's some alignment between Moscow and Cairo on Syria, too. There are certain members of the Syrian opposition who've been invited to discuss a transition in Damascus that looks to maintain the Syrian state, lays out some kind of mechanism to leave the army intact. which of course, again, is a common Russian-Egyptian interest here, with the top brass having long-standing ties to the Syrian military.
Right.
One thing I would also say is that the truth is that both Putin and Sisi, who plan on keeping their jobs, know that Assad is not going to keep his. And so even if the Syrian rebels lose, the Russians know that international donors aren't going to lend Assad money to rebuild the country.
Right. No, I mean, fascinating point on that front. But Jake, you're staying with us. We're also here with Dr. Sarah Feinberg from the IDC. And that's on the agenda, as Jacob Borchafter from Cairo said, in terms of, the specifics of the meeting. But at the end of the day, Dr. Feinberg, Putin, let's touch on him for a second. He's traveling to Egypt on the heels of 24 hours where, we have the American president in a very Obama-esque way, saying we are, wagging his finger, we're not going to let Europe's borders be withdrawn. Hammond, British foreign minister, basically strong words against Putin. But so this trip to Cairo, I mean, is it also designed, as everybody says, designed to send a message to the Western world?
Of course, the first goal of this deal in Cairo, even though it had been planned before,
right, is
to send a strong message to the U.S. administration. And the deal, the real message is about raising the price. There's going to be a kind of breakthrough on Wednesday. It seems to be
in Minsk.
In Minsk, the Russian press indicates that there's going to be a breakthrough, but the idea is to raise the price. The French and the Germans, which guarantee did they offer the Russians? First of all, that there will not be a delivery of weapons to Ukraine, and second, that Ukraine will not join NATO. Of course, from the Russian point of view, this is not enough, and this is very low of a price. What Russia wants is a full lifting of Western sanctions, in addition to receiving a guarantee that both the US, NATO, and also the European Union will not infringe upon the the former Soviet bordering states, including Georgia, Central Asia, and the countries bordering Russia on the west.
On the west. But, it's fascinating on that front, and I mean, that's on Putin's agenda. When this trip comes, to wag the finger. And Jacob Borchafter, still with us, obviously, in Cairo. When it comes to Sisi, when I look at pictures of the streets of Cairo with huge posters of Putin, and this is all reminiscent a little bit of the early 70s, when Russia was, one of the best friends of Egypt. When, I mean, I'm leading to, this looks like a wagging of a finger of kind of a Cold War, isn't it?
Yeah, although it does seem a little bit of a performance more than a pivot. Right. I mean, yeah, there are posters of Putin put up across Cairo, and they're emblazoned with the word welcome. And more of these posters are in English than in Arabic or Russian. So it's clear who the visit is a signal to. It's a signal to Washington. Exactly. It needs to fully engage with the leadership here. The leadership here as it exists, with the full range of regional issues as they exist. Look, Russia is not the Soviet Union. The Russian economy equals that of Brazil. So we're going to expect, talks here today about Russian and Egyptian economic cooperation. But frankly, Moscow doesn't have the capital required for infrastructure investment. And what Egypt wants is an investor for a nuclear power program so that the lights can stay on here. Right. Now, Russia has that technology, but China is the world and the emerging world power that has the right gear and the cash to deliver that to Egypt.
No, it's a fascinating point of the message, as you stated, Jake, without much capital behind it. That said, if one listens to President Obama yesterday, let's have a listen to what he said over the on a stage in the White House, standing next to Angela Merkel, as a clear message to Putin. And Sarah, this is one that you should listen to with me when it comes to the agenda in the Ukraine and who has the power to do what. Let's have a listen.
The prospect for a military solution to this problem has always been low. Russia obviously has an extraordinarily powerful military, and given the length of the Russian border with Ukraine, given the history between Russia and Ukraine, expecting that if Russia is determined that Ukraine can fully rebuff a Russian army has always been unlikely.
Europe needs to have cohesion on the issue of sanctions and on dealing with Ukraine.
If, in fact, diplomacy fails, what I've asked my team to do is to look at all options. What other means can we put in place to change Mr. Putin's calculus? And the possibility of lethal defensive weapons is one of those options that's being examined. But I have not made a decision about that yet.
Dr. Sarah Feinberg of the IDC, I'm not going to call this a threat from the United States president. It's a very cautious threat in many ways, and yet this morning also we're hearing that the Kremlin radio, I think it is, basically comes out and saying that President Putin is not going to respond to ultimatums. Does the Russian president, because he seems to be going ahead with anything and everything that he wants, because he knows that the international community actually has no time to get involved in the Ukraine in the way that it's wagging its finger right now?
What is happening now is that all the parties have lost the capacity to act on the ground. The U.S. and
except for Russia, maybe Russia seems to be acting on the ground.
The U.S. and the European Union are losing credibility hour after hour, especially with a threat like this of sending lethal defensive weapons. If they don't do it, they're losing credibility on the Middle East and in the war against ISIS. On the Russian side, what we're not seeing so much, but what is very salient in Russia, there is a mounting opposition against Putin in the inner circle of the Kremlin. If you listen to the defense minister Shoigu, if you listen to the apparatus, you see that there is a growing resistance against Putin and in the population as well.
Really? Because, there seem to be reports, and yesterday we had a conversation with a Russian journalist who said that actually the narrative that Putin is pushing, which is very reminiscent to some narratives in the Middle East of leaders, is that, the world is against us and I'm going to stand firm. And that's selling, though. Isn't it selling?
This is without counting the effect of sanctions on the Russian oligarchs and on the high apparatus of the Kremlin. What we're seeing, in fact, is a growing mounting opposition, a growing civic movement against Putin. You have meetings in Moscow week after week, and inside the Kremlin you have growing opposition. That's why I believe that Putin, in a way, it is in his interest to have a kind of breakthrough in order to have some breathing space and keep his credibility. In addition to this breakthrough would not mean the end of the war. It would mean a frozen conflict. And a frozen conflict is something that Russia can live with. Russia can keep a war at a very low flame, right, and keep this war on its own terms.
No, it keeps the war on its own terms, but at the end of the day, isn't what Russia wants is eastern Ukraine. And it seems like Putin's not going to give up. So how long can he maintain such a low flame?
Russia can go by a Georgian scenario, meaning keeping the eastern parts of Ukraine as Russia kept before Transnistria with Moldova, right, or South Ossetia with Georgia, keeping this separatist province, as a natural expansion of Russia, but that does belong to Ukraine. And this would be an ideal option for Putin. In addition to this, I want to add that Putin has a very strong leverage in hand. And this leverage is a triangle that he created in the Middle East. As you know, a few weeks before, Shoigu was in Iran. In late January, they organized this inter-Syrian conference, right, between the rebels and the government in Moscow. Even though it didn't yield any results, it placed Russia back on the table. And what is cooking now is a return of Russia to the Palestinian question. And that's what Putin is doing in Egypt. Basically, the Egyptians and Russians are sharing views on the Palestinian question. They want to solve this question for different reasons, and that's what Russia is preparing. And if Russia gains a stronger leverage on the Palestinian issue, it will be able to negotiate the Ukrainian-Russian conflict or the US-Russian conflict in better terms.
Fascinating. Jacob Wirtschafter still with us from Cairo. Really quickly, I'm just wondering out loud with you, can we see a scenario where Sisi becomes the new Jimmy Carter when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian issue?
Well, I mean, this is crazy, but Professor Feinberg's right. I mean, on Israel-Palestine, the Russian foreign ministers repeatedly called on the Arab League countries, which includes Egypt at its head, essentially, to join the quartet of the Middle East mediators.
Right.
And if Egypt is in more, contributing more to the resolution of the conflict, and Russia is the person Russia is not the person, Russia is the country that delivers the Arab League into a serious discussion of the Israel-Palestine thing. Well, that's a big deal. No, Cairo does not want its policy against Hamas to be viewed as complacency for the lack of progress towards two states, and the Russians have picked up on that.
Yeah, completely. Jacob Port, I mean, there's fascinating issues, and it's interesting to see Dr. Feinberg. I mean, it's the first time that I'm looking at it from this direction. It would be interesting to see if Russia and Egypt position themselves in this type of form of resolving something in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Then it's really a game changer in terms of, who holds the cachet in world powers. Interesting. Thank you so much for being with us. Obviously, we'll be following this along to remind everybody tomorrow in Minsk, a conference to try and resolve the Ukrainian issue. Jacob Port from Cairo, thank you for being with us this morning. Moving on, a new propaganda video by the Islamic State featuring the British photojournalist John Cantley, in which he says it is the last film in this series, to quote him, has appeared online. Now, the documentary-style production is titled From Inside Halab, an ancient name for the Syrian city of Aleppo. Cantley reports on a range of topics, including education, drone strikes, and Sharia law. Cantley's video comes on the heels of the gruesome burning alive video of Jordanian pilot Mouda al-Qasasbeh, which ISIS posted online last week, as well as a statement released by the Islamic group stating that Kayla Miller, an American hostage supposedly held by the group since 2013, died in a Jordanian airstrike in the group's stronghold in Syria. Now, since gaining control of large swaths of Iraq and Syria, the Islamic State has struck a consistent pattern in dealing with hostages from the United States and the United Kingdom, two countries that adhere to a strict policy against paying ransom. And we're going to try and examine the mechanism behind the hostage terror of ISIS. Let's first take a look at the following report about the latest when it comes to the Islamic State and break it down from there.
Tonight, the parents of Kayla Mueller are clinging to hope their daughter is still alive.
The primary thing that they would really, really like to see is that little girl walk back through that front door.
ISIS has yet to provide any proof to back up the claim that she was killed in an airstrike. And U.S. officials tonight say they highly doubt the ISIS version of events.
ISIS has not hesitated in the past to display gruesome images of executions and of death.
Kayla was the last known American among some 15 to 20 hostages ISIS is believed to be holding. Among them, British journalist John Cantley, who appeared in a new video today, again forced to be a spokesperson for ISIS, pointing out what he said was a surveillance drone overhead.
At some point, that drone will be taking photographs, dropping bombs, or firing missiles.
U.S. officials say an American rescue mission last July 4th weekend into Syria missed all of the American hostages, including Kayla Mueller, by just 2 days. The mother of one of the hostages killed after that failed mission, James Foley, is now renewing her criticism of the White House efforts to save the young Americans.
Kayla, along with our son and others, were held for nearly 2 years, and there were many opportunities along the way. And yet, nothing was done to save our young Americans.
Kayla's parents are now asking that ISIS communicate with them privately, as they apparently had done before, saying, "You told us you treated Kayla as your guest. As your guest. Her well-being and safety remains your responsibility."
We're joined in studio by Dr. Shaul Shai, former deputy head of the Israeli National Security Council and a lecturer at the IDC Herzliya. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Shai. I'm wondering with you out loud, when we're looking at this ISIS modus operandi, which, with hostages, and even just, with Kayla Mueller, is this a group that the Western world is even capable of dealing with? Because the idea of not discussing anything with them doesn't seem to matter. How does one even approach the hostage negotiation situation with ISIS? Is there even something that, can veer away from the usual modus operandi of negotiations?
I think that we have to take in consideration that the hostages are just a part of the overall strategy of the Islamic State. And unfortunately, they are aware to the sensitivity of the Western society to human life, which stands in total contradiction to the culture of death of this organization. So in most of the cases, it's very difficult to trust them. I think that the experience with the Jordanian pilot that was killed shortly after he was captured, but
supposedly we know that for a fact now, but they held on to the video, held on to the information.
Unfortunately, I think that the only way to deal with this type of organization is not to give up and not to agree to negotiation.
But at the end of the day, some of the hostages that were released by ISIS, I mean, and there are a few that were after, you know, money transferings, whatnot. And when we look at what's happening right now, when we look at criticism from American parents or American families, like the mother of Kayla Mueller, who's the last supposedly American hostage there. You know, it's, as you said, if they are pawns of PR, the hostages, then why play along with it? And isn't the Western world actually, shouldn't they look at something completely different that needs to be done? And why aren't there more attempts to even try and release these hostages with operations, is what I'm wondering.
I think that the solution of the hostages will be with the solution of the end of this cruel entity. And I think that the main problem is not the way that the West is dealing with the hostages, but the overall strategy. I mean, airstrikes are okay. Not more than it. They succeeded to contain the territorial achievements of the Islamic State. They forced them to invest more in protecting themselves, but it's not enough to defeat them. And without a significant ground operation, it will take a long time.
A long time, no, clearly. I mean, I don't think that any Western country right now is looking to send troops over to the Middle East for so many reasons. But you know, many will agree with you that sadly that might be the only thing to solve it. But looking at the hostages, the idea of the United States to, for example, Foley was held hostage for many years. Nobody knew about it until he was killed. Same goes with Kayla Mueller. Is this something that, you know, and clearly, you know, it's not playing good for the people held hostage, that the Western world is holding their, you know, the fact that they're being held hostage quiet. Is that something that can be done differently? Because you say, I mean, you know, if they are PR pawns.
I think that the United States has a long-standing policy regarding the problem of hostages and prisoners of war. And I think that it is important to be consistent. I made a study several years ago regarding problem of hostages.
Right.
And my conclusion was that if we take countries that surrendered to the demands of the terrorists and countries that refuse to negotiate, I cannot say that those who agreed to pay or to release prisoners in exchange were better protected than those
who did.
Yeah.
Than those who did.
Yeah.
But you know, it's still it's this type of hostage taking and dealings that we are completely you know, new to, I think, in the world. And I'm looking at John Cantley. Let's take a quick look at the latest video released by hostage John Cantley, who seems to be, you know, reporting, quote unquote, for the Islamic State. This is what came out yesterday. This is a new video that came out by ISIS.
I'm John Cantley. In the last film in this series, we're in a city that has been at the heart of the fighting since summer 2012. Today, we're inside Halab. And what we're going to find out is if all this bomb bombs, all this fighting, and all this destruction has even slowed down the advance of the Islamic State. Now, one of the common accusations of the West is that under an Islamic State, education will suffer. Religious studies and changes to the curriculum don't quite fit their image of progressive schooling. But here in Al-Bab, these young men here are learning Quran recital and languages, and with any luck, they will form the Mujahideen for the next generation in this region.
John Cantley's been held there for several years. Here he looks reporting like, you know, some would say better than, you know, Western networks and American television stations, the way it's being edited. But when we look at something like that, you know, that's a new modus operandi that is so terrifying when a line comes out and says, this is the last of these videos. What does that even mean? And, you know, how does one react to that?
I would like to remind you that the way that the Islamic State is treating hostages is not different from Al-Qaeda, not different from Boko Haram, not different from Al-Shabaab al-Mujahideen. This is a modus operandi that all these type of radical Islamic groups are using.
But this is even a bit different. This is not join us or die. This is join us and die. You know, this is, you know, that's the thing that's...
Yeah, I think that it will be very important to try to prevent as much as possible people from Western countries to travel to these areas. Yeah, because later on, to save them or to exchange them for prisoners or ransom, very difficult and sometimes impossible. So I think that the main message should be, don't go there.
That's something I could. Sadly, we don't have that much time. The argument to that would be, how would we know what happens, what is going on in those places if we don't go and try and report? That said, I will agree with you that once a journalist, a Western journalist, travels there and falls into the hands of ISIS, they themselves become the story. They themselves become a pawn within this horrific, you know, within this horrific crisis. But I want to thank you, Dr. Shai, very much for being with us again. You know, hopefully we will see more of Cantley and alive and released in the coming weeks. Thank you for being with us. When we get back, Israel's police sexual harassment problem. We'll take a closer look. First, though, let's go back to the morning headlines. Welcome back. The morning edition on I-24 News, the place you simply must be on this February 10th. Thank you. Because, yes, this is where Tony Grant joins me, not just to tell you what date it is, because I tend to forget, but also to give you the headlines you missed while scanning the news or in reverse.
Yeah, both.
Yeah, both.
Same thing in reverse.
Same, exactly.
Okay.
And what were those?
Well, let's start with Obama.
Please.
I think we, you know, the sort of tit for tat going on with Netanyahu and Obama. I think the tit for tat is such a beautiful PC way. You're California. I love that you're from the West Coast. This incredible rift, anger, thank you, between President Obama. Yeah. Some issues.
Some issues between President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Little issues, you know, involving major allies.
I love the real differences is a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, little differences. I think actually we have some bit of a
let's hear what President Obama had to say to Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday in a press conference from the White House. Let's have a listen.
With respect to Prime Minister Netanyahu, as I've said before, I talk to him all the time. Our teams constantly coordinate. We have a practice of not meeting with leaders right before their elections, 2 weeks before their elections. As much as I love Angela, if she was 2 weeks away from an election, she probably would not have received an invitation to the White House. And I suspect she wouldn't have asked for one. So, you know, now, I don't want to be coy. The Prime Minister and I have a very real difference around Iran, Iran sanctions. I have been very clear, and Angela agrees with me, and David Cameron agrees with me, and the others who are a member of the negotiations agree that it does not make sense to sour the negotiations a month or two before they're about to be completed. And we should play that out. If, in fact, we can get a deal, then we should embrace that. If we can't get a deal, then we'll have to make a set of decisions. And as I've said to Congress, I'll be the first one to work with them to apply even stronger measures against Iran.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good stuff. Issues. You know, I gotta say, I'm loving Angela Merkel's dress there. I mean, what a bold statement. You know, it's like a bottle of wine.
The only thing that went through my head was, yes, put the German chancellor on the spot there when it comes to Israel.
And he
good
did.
Move. Angela.
Very familiar.
But this is looking bad. And Netanyahu yesterday, I think, had to say, he basically said he's going ahead with this. This is all about the Congress speech. And he's going ahead to
well, you know, Netanyahu, of course, has some issues here in Israel, such as power breakfasts. Did you catch this headline from Amir Oren in Haaretz? Yeah. The latest expense scandal is the $5,200 breakfast. Which, okay, I don't want to laugh because in Netanyahu's defense, he said that the meals only cost $20 per person. This was a group of bigwigs in Caesarea. It happened recently, I guess.
I think it was the American
U.S. Defense Secretary was there, Bill Gates. But that was a little pricey meal.
Well, listen, if Bill Gates was there.
If Bill Gates was there, but yeah.
5,200, yeah.
For the group.
For the group.
Yeah.
For the group.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so
That's
issues all around.
Scrambled, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Ed, moving along.
Also, speaking of scandal, the latest HSBC banking scandal, there were some Swiss leaks, of course, that dropped and showing that apparently many customers were dodging millions of dollars in taxes after documents were leaked, including 6,000 Israelis who apparently have holdings totaling some $10 billion in HSBC, which has been linked in the past to money laundering for Hezbollah, I might add.
The is publishing a list of names.
Yeah.
Karen Kirsch of I-24 News, I mean, you will agree with us that neither you, myself, or Tony Grant have those accounts?
No.
No, we do not. Not my favorite bank anyway. But anyway,
unfortunately for us.
For us, yes. Wow.
Not the greatest PR for HSBC, but we'll see what happens with that.
Some Israeli
tycoons.
Yes.
Also, speaking of leaks, a leaked recording that shows President Sisi of Egypt bashing some of the Gulf Arab donor countries like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait because they're not coughing up the billions of dollars in aid that they've pledged. And someone leaked it, and to Egypt, I think, too, as well, because there were some pledges made to Egypt at some point for some kind of assistance.
In many ways, one can say that Sisi is right. We all remember this big conference.
It's easy to say you're going to pay, and it's harder to write the check, isn't it?
Bingo. And at the end of the day in Gaza, infrastructure, people, winter, it's a devastating situation. It was the money that was
the money issue. Yeah. And of course, my favorite story of the morning, speaking of money, we have this slapdown from Angela, the German slapdown of the Greek call for World War II reparations. Very, very thorny subject here.
Yes.
We're going back to the dark times of 1942 when the Nazis imposed a loan on the Greek nation, which they occupied for 4 years, of what would today be 11 billion euros. And the Germans are saying, no, we really don't have to pay it back. Now, they have made some reparations over time, but the Greeks are saying that they haven't touched on this core issue. And of course, if the Germans did pay this back, it would kind of, help the Greek economy, which some could say is still suffering the ramifications of the brutal Nazi occupation and deportation of so many Jews, among others. So again, diplomatically between Greece and Germany right now, it is testy.
You could actually stand on the White House podium. Testy.
Yes.
Issues.
Actually, I would say that it puts the American-Israeli so-called rift to shame, because we're talking about Alan Greenspan now saying that Greece is getting ready to leave the euro. Of course, Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve, when he talks, people listen.
People listen, very true.
Even though he's no longer serving in that role, he is.
No, but if anybody knows, it's him. And if, as we said for many weeks after these very, groundbreaking elections in Greece, if there is the Brexit, then I think that poses a whole big question mark on the entire EU. Interesting times.
Interesting times indeed. And of course, Obama, as we saw speaking before, he is kind of a pivoter towards Asia. I think the people in Asia give him less headaches on some level. We have he's going to be inviting Jinping of China and Shinzo Abe of Japan to visit the United States under his stepped-up pivot to Asia. Not clear from the South China Morning Post if he's going to invite them at the same time.
Right.
Because we know that they're not the best of friends. They had the world's coldest handshake, I think, a couple months ago. So they have some issues.
Just one finger. Yeah,
it's like, hey.
Yeah.
But they will be coming to America to talk about important issues in the months ahead.
Yeah, maybe in some places in the world, peace will prevail upon us or not. But Tony, yes, all time for that. You are locked in studio with us as usual as we move on.
As the man.
As the man in studio. As we move along.
Thank you.
And we move to a local story, but one that has international parallels. The Israeli police has been plagued, and by plagued, it's an understatement, by a series of sexual harassment claims in recent months, with 7 officials ranking as high as commissioner being accused of misconduct. In some cases, investigations have led to charges and firings and resignations. Some have blamed the flood of complaints on political recriminations within the organization, while others blame it on the police's non-egalitarian power structure. Now, joining me in studio is I-24 News editor Karen Kirsch. Karen, good morning to you. And Karen Greenblatt, legal advisor for Israel's Women's Network. Good morning to you. A woman who does sacred work as far as I'm concerned. Let's take a look, though, at the following report about what is going on within the Israeli police and break it down from there.
This commissioner, under questioning at the Israeli Police Investigation Unit, knew it was only a matter of time until he would be summoned. This recent affair started a few weeks ago with the intelligence received by the investigation unit on acts of sexual harassment he committed against female subordinates. An undercover investigation was conducted alongside an open one of other senior police members. 5 policewomen were also summoned to the investigation unit offices. All 5 refused to complain against the commissioner. Only hours later, they decided to cooperate and submitted a full, very disturbing account of the officer's verbal sexual harassment against them. The events and investigations at the top of the police force are indeed dire, embarrassing, and frustrating. These are the words of the chief of police, Yohanan Danino, whose deputy was also investigated for sexual harassment suspicions. This is the gloomy picture of today's police chiefs. 6 commissioners retired or had to retire under special circumstances. 2 of them were fired. They are now joined by the 7th commissioner, and nobody doubts that he too will be forced to leave his post.
Karen Greenblatt, first of all, you know, this is going as high up as possibly, you know, the commissioners, whatnot. This has been plaguing the Israeli press for many, many weeks. But, I mean, what is being done to combat it, truthfully, now that this is out? Is something being done to combat it?
Absolutely. I mean, first, I think it's important to say that I think the plague is not the complaints. The plague is the sexual harassment itself.
Completely.
And it's nothing new. I mean, it's been, sexual harassment has been a problem forever in every kind of workplace. And I think there's even something good about the fact that we're finally starting to see it happening, and we're finally starting to see the crumbling of the system that's been, silencing these women and men who are victims of sexual harassment. For the question of whether something's being done, absolutely.
What?
I mean, the fact that these commissioners are being suspended, they're being arrested in some cases, this shows us that the police force has undergone the beginning of a very deep process of first of all, acknowledging that there's a problem. And secondly, actually starting to do something about it. You know, just last year was the first time that the police commissioner appointed a female advisor for women's issues in the police. And I think that has a lot to do with what's going on today or in the last week or so. The fact that, you know, the message that comes down within the organization to all the female police officers who have been harassed,
right.
Is that there's someone to talk to.
But Karen Kirsch, I'm wondering out loud, actually, with both of you, but, you know, Karen Kirsch, who is my feminist aficionado, but still something like this in the short-term effect. When we look at this happening within the police, maybe that's the beginning of a process. But when it comes to the greater public, doesn't it send a horrific message to women who are sexually harassed at home, you know, or be it rape or whatnot?
The problem is that this is the police. You know, when one of the questions that came up in the past few weeks was how did the army deal with it? Because it was a very big problem that the Israeli army has been dealing with for years, and it did a very sort of internal big process that has shown some results.
Right.
The situation is better, but the army is not responsible for direct, the police is in charge for women who come to complain. And that's sort of a very complicated message, especially when some of these women are still attacked by the media.
Exactly.
And are still victimized again by the media.
And that's the question, Karen Grunblatt, same to you, because as you said, it's the beginning of a process, which is a good process.
She's the optimist.
Clearly you are the optimist. I'm sitting here thinking, terrified for rape victims, as Karen Kirsch said, and also that is this not something that is infringed within, I hate to say this, but maybe Israeli mentality, which is more of it's still, we are in the Middle East, it's more of somewhat of a patriarchal society.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sexual harassment is not an Israeli problem. It's a
Clearly
global
not.
problem.
Yeah.
However, the power structures and the character of very male-dominated security organizations is in fact something that may be slightly stronger in Israel because of the major part that the military plays in our society. Absolutely.
And even though women are in the military, they're not fighting, they're not really at the front line in many ways.
Yeah, but I do think it's important to emphasize that Israeli Women's Network, we do a lot of training in workplaces about sexual harassment, training managers and CEOs and training the employees that this is something that they need to start dealing with. And we hear this a lot. People are saying, I haven't heard of any case in this workplace, so we're clean. And I think this is something to be worried about. If the CEO has never heard of a sexual harassment case in their organization, that definitely means that people can't talk, that they feel afraid, that there isn't a mechanism in place to deal properly and according to the law when a sexual harassment case happens.
Right.
So I think, that's something that CEOs...
Because statistics shows that in every workplace something...
Absolutely.
Seriously.
Absolutely.
Every workplace.
Every workplace.
Just think about yourself. It's not even something that we don't need to go further than ourselves in this situation about any workplace that we've been in.
No,
really.
No. In many ways, though, it's true. I don't want to make light of the situation as I look at Tony. Just kidding. No, but the only man in the studio right now. Exactly. No, it's very, very true. But I think also when you have, even as of late in the military, and I'm just asking, it's a story that you brought to us when the Israeli military comes out, and the honor badges that it gives Israeli women soldiers is the fact that they held it together.
Yeah.
It's embedded within the culture.
They didn't go into hysteria.
They didn't go into hysteria. So it's that type of the way that you view women.
They changed it.
They changed it.
Yes.
Good. And there's an update on that story.
Yeah, they changed it. But it is a process. And when you think about the police, there is no, in the army, you could have certain justifications for not having women in the top positions. In the police, there is no justification.
There's no justification. No, and there shouldn't be in any case, but there is no justification. Sadly, all the time we have, because I can pound on this for hours long. Thank you for being with us. When we get back, Israeli gene researchers explain why autism is more common among boys, and new research shows. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back. I-24 News Morning Edition, Monday, February
10th.
Sorry, it is Tuesday, February 10th.
Yeah.
I should
Tuesday
stop.
the 10th.
It's Tuesday the 10th. I should stop reading my prompter. 2015.
Yeah.
This is still the morning edition. I am still Yael Levi. Thank Allah, Shachar Peled is with us.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, amen. Kumbaya, anyone? But because we are moving into a very interesting story. Biochemists from the Tel Aviv University believe they have discovered why some brain pathologies are more common among one of the sexes. While autism is more common among males, Alzheimer's disease affects more females. Now, according to the study, the reason for this may be because a gene known as ADNP, which is crucial to the brain development, differs in its impact on the brains of each gender. Now, about these findings that are very, very I think new and important. I'm actually going to let Shachar Peled, who's the I-24 correspondent, that took a closer look at all of this, let me know what you found out before we look at the report.
Yeah, so, well, Israel takes pride in its scientific achievements, and rightly so, but what we're looking now into is into a very, very groundbreaking research in terms of its potential to be useful to so many people. Most of the researchers take their time, let's say, and focus on much more, scientific research, which is very much towards perhaps a Nobel Prize or things that are less useful, less practical. And here, Professor Gozes is looking into research that could really change everyone's lives. Let's have a look.
I have Alzheimer's disease, early onset.
Julianne Moore's latest portrayal of a professor who receives the devastating diagnosis sheds light on a disease which affects women twice as much as men. And Israeli research now explains why.
What we've asked in this particular study that we are discussing is it the same in males and females?
Professor Ilana Gozes has been researching biochemistry for over 3 decades. 15 years ago, she discovered a gene essential for the formation of the brain.
We called it ADNP, activity-dependent neuroprotective protein, because it protects nerve cells against electrical blockade. ADNP was very recently found to be mutated in autism. So this is a very strong connection, and also ADNP may change in Alzheimer's disease.
Published in the prestigious Translational Psychiatry magazine, Professor Gozes' latest study revealed groundbreaking results. The gene regulates differently in men and women, explaining why males are 4 times more likely to suffer from autism than females, and why Alzheimer's is more common in women.
It's opening a door to think about our brains not as the same like males and females. Also, when we design drugs, we have to be very careful in clinical trial design, because the female and the male, or the boy and the girl, won't react exactly the same.
Today, there is no separation between men and women in terms of mental or neurological diseases. Thus, the new study might be revolutionary for developing the cure.
If there is a difference, we should treat males and females, or men and women, separately, and think about it, how to help in a better way.
Gozes and her team now have a drug candidate in their lab, one of the most useful findings which could lead the way for a disease-fighting drug.
It enhances ADNP activity, I think, for the better.
In the meantime, they continue the lab work, providing a ray of hope to millions.
I am in touch with the families of the children with ADNP mutation, and I would love to help them. And you know, we all know people with Alzheimer's disease. So this is another population that I would really love to help.
So, Shacha, I'm asking you, it's fascinating stuff, but I think also for people who have family members with Alzheimer's or children who have autism, how far away is she? I mean, at the end of the day, this is the preliminary research. I'm sure this is giving a ray of hope.
Exactly. That's why we were very careful. It is a ray of hope. It's the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's still at the end of the tunnel. There's still a long way to go. As she mentioned, they are working with drug candidates, and there is a small pharmaceutical company who is working with them on trying to start, or at least begin some kind of a drug, but there's still a long way to go.
Some kind of a drug they would do. I mean, once they realize what the pardon me, what the gene is.
Exactly. So let's start by translating this into English. First of all, something that is very important to mention is that they do experiment on mice. They do use human tissue, post-mortem tissue, but they do experiment on mice. This is a method, unfortunately, up until today, scientists still have to use. And what they did in the first place, 15 years ago, when they discovered the ADNP gene, this protein, they understood how essential it is for the brain. When they took a look at the development of the mouse in the first place, once you take away ADNP, there is no formation of the brain. So this is something so crucial. We all have ADNP. The next step was a basic finding that there was a difference in the quantity between females and males in the quantity of this ADNP. We all have the same protein, but its amount is different. And this is the reason why changing it, any different difference or
I'm
change
this,
in
like,
it.
in layman's terms, if it's the quantity of that ADNP, of that protein, is the protein?
Yes, exactly.
That actually, if there's more of it or less of it, it can cause a certain disease.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly the point. And it's simplifying it. It's adding ADNP that might change or balance these diseases. And if we take a look at the numbers, you said how can it help people? The numbers are tremendous. We're talking about 1.5% of all American children. This is 1 out of 68 children suffers from autism, and this is an increase from 2012. These are numbers from 2014. In 2012, it was 1 in 88. Now, there's been a gradual increase in diagnosing autism since the 1980s. We have to understand that this is something that the governments usually help in the process of diagnosing these illnesses, not because the illness is growing in itself. But we know today that 1 out of every 68 children in the US suffers from autism. The numbers in Alzheimer's diseases are also incredible. This is back in 2010. There were between 21 and 35 million people suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Almost 500,000, 500,000 people died from this disease that year.
One of the most horrifying, I think,
in developed countries, I'm sorry, AD is one of the most financially costly diseases. This is something that the world is suffering from. And we're focusing many times on cancer and on AIDS and on Ebola, but working with the brain and these neurological scientists, it's incredible to watch them work. They are actually what they showed us was actual neurobrain cells that they are growing inside incubators, artificial, of course. And
I know, but the word Frankenstein comes to mind.
They take them from live tissues and artificially make them immortal, and they actually grow them inside incubators. It's amazing to see.
Wow.
And through this, very, very complex work, they hope to save lives of millions.
No, and it is an amazing breakthrough, as you mentioned several times, which is important to say. It's a ray of light at the end of a tunnel that sadly is still too far. But diseases that don't get as much PR. It's a horrible thing to say.
No, it's
true. It's true.
These
as
are
cancer,
diseases, and that I think the awareness, once again, as we see Still Alice portrayed by Julianne Moore, this is something that gradually awareness is growing. Once there's a Hollywood movie about it, this is good news. Sadly to say, this is good news for the disease. And one more aspect of it, the drug. Once they understood there's a difference between men and women, these days mental and neurological drugs are not separated between the sexes. Now that they understand that there is a gene that is very much different between the sexes, it can change the entire way we look at the drug infrastructure, maybe not only in the mental issues. Today, only, of course, in reproduction issues, there is a difference in drugs, but this might open the door to a different way we look at drugs. Perhaps we should change the way
it looks. And when it comes to the brain, the undiscovered, the big enigma that is the human brain, but things like also, Parkinson's, all related.
Exactly. This ADNP is, of course, in charge of something like 450 genes. So all cognitive related diseases are in the potential group of
things that are affected by the ADNP.
Looking further research.
Jaffa Port, always such a pleasure with a somewhat optimistic. Yeah, can we say this in the Middle East? It's a somewhat optimistic bit of news.
You can look at it that way.
Amen. Wow, I was about to cross myself. Shahar, locked in the studio as we move along. Now to the breaking news of the day. The spiral viral that is the web review. Tony Grant, hit me.
Well, God has spoken.
Yes.
To Katy Perry.
Of course.
Now, this is the Holy Land, and it must be said, before we get to the Grammys, we have the Super Bowl, the halftime show. Katy Perry has said that God told her that she got that. So
hold on. In a dream, via mail.
No,
how did this come?
George Burns.
Burning bush.
Yeah. There was a burning message. She was feeling a little, can I do this? Can I do this? And she does maintain.
And God said,
God just
get up
said,
half naked on a tiger. And yes, you can.
And dress like a Cheeto, and you'll be fine.
Bingo. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah, so we're
dancing sharks alongside.
Left shark, right shark, the whole thing. Yeah,
so it looked like the act of God, actually.
It did. It did.
So
wow.
My God. Speaking of God, Kanye West at the Grammys continues his sort of deity complex.
Yeah.
He just couldn't keep himself from, of course, interrupting Beck's speech for winning the Grammy Album of the Year, and of course. He has said post that his Grammy win is disrespectful to inspiration because somebody else was more deserving. And I say sour grapes. I mean, come on.
It's very Marlon Brando-esque. Isn't it?
It's become part of his show, I think. It's something people expect him to do.
Look, there he is with Taylor Swift. They're pretending to be besties. But we know what she's thinking.
That's like release my hand.
Yeah, it's like, let me go.
Taylor Swift is tall.
She is tall, and she's got thin arms. I think she needs to eat more. Lady Gaga had a little malfunction there, wardrobe malfunction on the red carpet.
Oh, was it?
She's looking pretty confident about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're
Are
happy.
we hiding a nipple there?
Yeah, well,
yes,
it's censored there. Also, because we're still talking about the Grammys, Miley Cyrus and Katy Perry made amends. Apparently... Yeah, because apparently they were feuding, but now they're not. They're very... And look at Katy Perry in that picture. She is channeling Sophia Loren with purple hair, I think.
Channeling Sophia Loren, or I was about to say she looks like a woman who God has spoken to right now. Maybe he's speaking to her at that moment.
At that moment.
Yeah. She's like, don't worry.
If he told her, color your hair purple, he was wrong. What was he thinking?
But notice Miley's keeping her tongue in her mouth, and that's nice for a change. But of course, all tongues...
Yes,
but that's a feat. That's a feat. Annie Lennox, before CBS, the performance was really fantastic. I even say it won up to Madonna. I watched it. I just didn't know what to say.
No, Annie Lennox, first of all, it's classy. Look at that woman, just like Madonna. I think she looks fabulous.
She looks fantastic.
Once again, Shachar, you weren't born. But
I know Annie.
Sweet dreams are made of that.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
Love it.
Great stuff.
Yes.
Bruce Jenner.
Please.
Okay.
Do we have to?
Yes, we do. We do.
This is, of course, the Saturday car crash in Malibu, which was a really bad one. We have to say someone actually was a fatality involved. He allegedly was potentially texting, but now he's saying that no, he was smoking during this. So,
wasn't a paparazzi flight?
That's exactly right.
Paparazzi may or not have been chasing him. See, what happened is the crash happened and the Grammys happened, so people this was swept under the carpet, but now it's coming back.
Yeah, now it's coming back.
He is, she. Because let's just...
Did Bruce announce what his name was going to be, actually?
I'm thinking, I don't know, Brucetta.
Brucetta's good.
Chelsea's already taken, so...
well, anyway.
We have
come every day. Yes. So Bruce Jenner, wow.
It makes you want to reach for something nice to eat. Have you seen this video of Americans trying Israeli snacks?
No.
We talked about breakfast before.
Do we have the video?
We have to take a look at it.
Yes, can we take a look at the video? Do we have that video?
Delicious Israeli snacks.
Delicious Israeli snacks.
Bamba means baby, I'm guessing.
Or basketball.
They look like Cheetos, but they smell like peanuts. These are interesting.
I do not like it.
It's like putting a Cheeto in your mouth and then it turns into peanut butter.
I hate them, but I want more of them.
They're flavored wheat snacks. It's like not an attractive slogan.
No, this is great.
Yeah, BuzzFeed did this. I recommend that all of our viewers check it out. Just go Google Americans try Israeli snacks.
I always didn't understand how come Americans don't have Bamba. I mean, they live on
because
peanut butter.
Because we're Cheeto addicted.
But it's peanut butter. It's made for Americans.
I did bring Bamba over to the States, and people went crazy. That's a beastly. We have to address.
How isn't it a
Tony,
big
you did
thing
not grow. Yeah, you did not grow up in this country. Yeah. What is Bisley? For the love of God, what is it?
What is it made of?
Yeah, have you ever? I mean,
what is it supposed to taste like?
No, think about it. It's like goofy, and nobody knows what goofy is. I don't know what Bisley is. What is Bisley? It tastes like car oil.
It's like sort of something you put in your mouth, and you think what it's made of.
It's like falafel tasting, right?
Oh, but it's flavored.
It's flavored, but it looks like really stale pasta that has been dipped in car oil.
Now that is something I want more of.
That might be it.
That might be it. You know?
Wow.
It's like when Israel had no money, we're like, we got to give the kids something. But
no, but it's great. They're trying crembo there. They're trying all kinds of
maybe,
Israeli snacks.
maybe that'll be the best import. And of course, next, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a closer look at the BAFTAs from a French point of view. Stay with us. First, a little bit more of the morning headlines. Thank you for joining us. I-24 News Morning Edition. I will let Ronnie Stav tell me what day it is.
Well, it depends. What day
is it?
It's
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, and it's February 10th.
It is February 10th, and it's Tuesday.
And you know what? I'm glad you're here. To remind me of that.
I'm here for you.
Yeah, I'm feeling you. I-24 News culture contributor. Anything and everything pop culture that you need to know. Ronnie Stav with us. At a certain point, Laetitia Loni will waltz in a very, fabulous French way, but until then, take it away.
I feel like we have to do a little bit of that when she walks in.
Yes,
we'll dance.
And
but before we dance,
please.
So old is the new black. That's what it looks like.
Really?
Yeah.
How old is it? I'm loving that.
Yeah, we love it. It started with Celine's campaign featuring Joan Didion. She's 80 this year. It's beautiful.
No, stop.
I just made your day so much better. Tuesday just became such a good day.
Nasty, snobbish thing that I finally met somebody else in the Middle East who knows who Joan Didion is. I love Joan Didion.
Yes,
okay,
absolutely. I mean, for the ones that are not sure who Joan Didion is, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, The White Album, The Year of Magical Thinking. I mean, an amazing. She's an author, but also a thinker. I feel like that's a really important way to,
no, very true. One of the women, she has one of the best essays. My God, we're going to lose audience here. Best essays ever about leaving New York, and I don't know if you ever read it. And right to the point.
Yeah, totally.
And you know what I'm talking about. Okay,
definitely. Yes. So she was featured in a campaign by Celine. Everyone went crazy about it because again, it's not only the age, it's also what she portrayed as a woman, as a thinker, and so on and so forth.
And the accomplishments by the time you're 80, and which exactly we should be commended, should be respected, should be looked up to, not rather just, oh my God, here's this old person, what the Western world sadly does.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then 2 days later, 72 hours later, we have Johnny Mitchell. Yes, featuring a campaign for Yves Saint Laurent. 71.
Wow.
71. So it was like this moment of fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Old is the new black. Amen.
Old is the new black. Definitely. So that was a while. That was in December, and then we had Barney's campaign that came out 2 days ago. Supermodels from the 90s with new hot men near them, joining together.
Do we have something like that?
We don't have that one, but we have something that's even better. We have Mikhail Baryshnikov, who's doing a piece for Rag & Bone. Rag & Bone decided to feature their fall 2015 collection with a little video that we can see right here. And I mean, the swag this guy has.
Look at him. How old is he?
67. Yes.
No, this is amazing.
He's doing, it's Mikhail Baryshnikov and Lil Buck. He's 26. And I mean, the swag these two men have is fantastic. The cinematography
is gorgeous.
And the editing is just amazing. I actually don't like the video itself. It's really tacky. In a moment, we'll see they're playing chess together. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
you know, they're battling together through dance, and then they're battling together through a chess game. And that was the moment I was like, I need a cookie. I can't watch
just
this
let the man
anymore.
dance. Let them just dance.
Don't bring in all those chess, black and white, la 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 la. No, I was like, no. That's the moment I'm not feeling you anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was the moment I was not feeling it anymore. But I mean, I love Rag & Bone, and it was a beautiful I mean, it's a beautiful
video. Gesture.
And just, again, like, exactly what you're saying, like this idea that this...
That age is something to be respected. That you get to a certain point, an accomplishment
is something to be respected. Yeah. And then we had Alicia Rodriguez Villa. She's a young designer from Miami, and she decided to create a project with Fusion magazine where she featured campaigns that never happened yet, but she really wanted them to happen, having the Supreme Court Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg with Chanel, activist actor LeVron Cox with Versace, Gloria Steinem, activist feminists, Chloe, and so on and so forth, showing that, like, yes, that's the direction where fashion needs to go. It's not about, like, just having a pretty face. It's not about just maintaining this sort of aesthetics. Aesthetics comes from within.
And I mean, the whole agenda of old is the new black. This. Do we think, but seriously, let's talk about it. Do you think this is going to sell? I mean, isn't the
Absolutely. It's going to sell as a gimmick, you know? I don't think that the fashion is now like, we look so much inside, it's the depth. No, I mean, no.
That's not going to happen. Okay.
Fashion is aesthetics, and it's okay. And we've seen in the past year this... notion of like showing models that are completely different with different you know, with different features that are not necessarily considered attractive
it's not just,
at all.
As long as it's not just the heroin chic and the I have not eaten for 17 years.
Exactly. Now it's really showing even like deformed models, you know, and we can talk about the fact that it's a gimmick. We can talk about the fact that are they being you know, abused for the gimmicks in the, you know, in the name, thank you, of fashion. But at the end of the day, what gets to the common people, what gets to everyone, is the idea that different is beautiful. And I'm fine with whatever tool you're taking in the road.
Okay, I'm convinced.
Great.
And that's hard to do. Yes, moving along.
So we love that. Fantastic. And Mikhail Baryshnikov.
Yes,
so
more of Mikhail Baryshnikov.
Not more of Mikhail Baryshnikov, but we are going to men in fashion. So after months of speculation, it's been confirmed that New York is getting its very own men's fashion show. Yeah. Apparently, we are having a men's fashion show.
I'm shocked I'm shocked there was not one thus far.
Yeah. No, it was like a fashion week and
very gender. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And you know,
gender snobs. Yes. Okay. So it's getting its own fashion week.
Yeah. And I think that what you just mentioned is the most important thing. This idea of gender bender. Once we take everything towards, you know, the center and then create this mishmash of like we can't really tell what belongs to this gender,
and what belongs to this
gender, and therefore there's no such thing as one gender that is being specified by very, very certain features. So whatever we're doing in order to do that, we're excited about it.
I'm thinking about Tony, you know, that's how good for him he's doing his own fashion week.
We'll tell him.
We'll tell him. We'll have to tell him.
It is scheduled July 13th till July 16th, so he can still catch a flight.
Can still catch a flight and do an in-depth reporting about that. Yes,
definitely. And so Hacktivist Collective Anonymous, that we've seen things that they had.
Anonymous. Yes.
So it looks like now it's Anonymous versus ISIS. They cyber hacked their Twitter accounts. They're being used to mobilize fighters.
Right.
And they hacked all the accounts. It's by the hashtag #OptIsis, and they were managed to branch hundreds of ISIS Twitter accounts, email addresses. Yes, let's take a look.
And we have a clip. Let's have a look.
Greetings, citizens of the world. We are Anonymous. Operation ISIS continues. First, we need to clarify a few things. We are Muslims, Christians, Jews. We are hackers, crackers, hacktivists, fishers, agents, spies, or just the guy from next door. We are stupid.
Yes. So I mean,
I mean, I'm just that looks more power to them. But thinking of ISIS antics, I gotta say.
Yeah, I know, and they have like Requiem for a Dream soundtrack in the background, and I was like,
really?
What?
Yeah, really?
You're
gonna go with that?
Yeah, is this gonna be? But I mean, yes, it's important, obviously, and the fact that ISIS is using their Twitter accounts and their email addresses to really recruit people.
But I'm looking, you know, we're looking at the anonymous thing, which is kind of like a collaboration between the makers of the Matrix. and you know, and what's all? Remember the 5th of November.
But they're doing a really important. You know, it's a really
no. So they're hacking into. Tell me what they're doing.
They're hacking, and it's not the first time they hacked into the Ku Klux Klan Twitter account after all the after the Mike Brown killing, and different white supremacy groups creating all this violent statements over the Ferguson protests. They also hacked the jihadist sites after Charlie Hebdo. So
right, it's and Anonymous are very very well known when it comes to, you know, doing these splashes online. I hope, listen, anything to combat the horrific new phenomena that is ISIS.
Absolutely, and they are saying, they said something really important. They say, remember, the terrorists are calling themselves Islamic State, but they're not Muslims, and they're talking about the fact that Anonymous, they're saying, we're Jews, we're Muslims, we're Christians, we're
and separating it from the, you know, from the name tagging.
Exactly.
Look at what happened when we were speaking.
Yes, the Anonymous brought me here.
And just the appearance of beamed down to us, straight from the French studio, is the fabulous Laetitia Loigny.
Hello.
And with the anything and everything you need to know about the BAFTAs that happened. When did they happen?
Sunday.
Sunday, right?
Yeah.
And today's Tuesday.
It's usually on Sunday.
They're usually on Sunday. All the award shows are on Sunday, right? Mostly.
Because the rest of the week they work.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the people who work.
That's when everyone can sit and like do
But BAFTA's like a telling new thing towards the Oscars, which everybody cares about, so to speak. What happened there? Tell me.
Well, basically, pretty much exactly what happened with the Golden Globes. And
you're talking to somebody who has no life, honey. You know, I like it, and that means.
And that's it. That's my peanut for today. Like, exactly.
And that's all I'm going to talk about.
Goodbye.
Lovely. Then we'll discuss. But who won? What? Where?
Well, Boyhood has been taking a lot of prizes, and it's no surprise with this movie by Richard Linklater that's been made throughout 12 years. Which
is, for some people, think enough of a reason in order to give it any.
I mean, this is an argument where, for the sake of full disclosure, that Laetitia and I had outside of the studio.
Exactly.
You didn't like Boyhood.
It's not that it's not like that I didn't like the movie. I think it's amazing. The process is absolutely brilliant. The actors, it's amazing for Ethan Hawke and Patricia Arquette to keep for 12 years. It's been shot one week.
Yes.
It's been shot 1 week every year, and he kept it from 2000 to 2012, right? So I think it's absolutely brilliant. The movie itself, I think if it wasn't made throughout 12 years, the movie itself is okay. It's, you know, social and you can relate to the characters.
But I think that's like Linklater's movies. You know, it's very small. It's very
I know.
subtle.
I gotta tell you, I know what happened to you, and I think that's Linklater is the guy behind Dazed and Confused. One of the films that I adore. That when I saw much younger, when it ended, I was like, that's the end of the movie. And it upset me. And I think something with Boyhood that ends kind of, I mean, he goes out into, you know, basically Boyhood is done. But it's very much a slice of life. And I think you have to be 106 like myself. And not 19 like you. Just kidding. Maybe, who knows? Because it's very much like this piece of life that you're like, all these things happen, but and nothing really does.
Yeah.
And that's what life is about.
And I think that
I just became her shrink.
No, but like you said, it's the human experience. That's what he's portraying in his movies. So it's a very, very, you know, it's a very subtle and small little movies. But that's
But with Laetitia, I think, you know, the thing that you need to tell me about is Birdman. What happened with Birdman in the BAFTA?
Yeah, that's also why I'm pretty mad about this. You know, maybe I want to hate on Boyhood because Birdman is nominated the same year, and I want him to win, and I love this movie so much. Birdman has been taking not the lead prizes because, as I said, Boyhood took it best movie, best director, and best supporting actress for Patricia Arquette. Michael Keaton didn't get the best actor for Birdman because Eddie Redmayne took it for. The theory, it's not the same title in French, so I'm still in French in my brain. I just came back from the French studio. The theory of everything. And so yeah, Eddie Redmayne took this, and for the best actress, which is what I want to talk about also, Julianne Moore took it for Still Alice.
For the Alzheimer's.
And it's the year of Julianne Moore because she just won the interpretation prize in Cannes for a role that is completely different, which was Maps to the Star of David Cronenberg, where she's like insane and unbelievable. But now
we have a clip of her. Let's take a look. As you said, the year of Julianne Moore. Let's take a look at this.
What's going on?
Oh boy. He's gonna break up or? No. I have Alzheimer's disease. Early onset. Oh my God. I can see the words hanging in front of me and I can't reach them and I don't know who I am and I don't know what I'm gonna lose next. Stethoscope.
Until then. And here we go. No, but this is, a little discussions here. Julianne Moore, this, clearly playing here a woman who suffers from Alzheimer's. We bring the disease forward. But when you said this is her year, this is a woman who she was nominated several times before, wasn't she? Was nominated for The Hours, didn't win. I don't think she has an Oscar thus far.
No, she doesn't have an Oscar. She doesn't.
But
she's been great the whole career. She has one of the most amazing career for women. In her and Meryl Streep, of course.
Yeah, well, Meryl Streep is like God.
Julianne Moore is like doing this roller coaster of amazing parts, and she's so versatile, and she's getting the older she gets, the more interesting she gets physically.
She's doing a really, really weird type of a role. She was doing
where she's naked.
But she's naked throughout her career, and it's great, and we love it.
Yes. What was that movie, the Altman movie, where she was naked and was the most unsexual? Shortcuts, I think. Was she in Shortcuts? Yes, she was. The most unsexual scene ever, where she's completely naked, but it's whatever. Yes.
And she was doing last year. She was doing in Amelia's Eyes, and also what's the name of this? Something with the stars, Map of the Stars.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. She got the prize in Cannes for it.
Cannes for Map of the Stars.
David
for Map of the Stars.
Yeah,
okay,
she was incredible, even though
she was incredible. It's a horrible movie.
Okay, now that we have agreed on that, sadly, all the time we have. But you are never being released from this studio ever again, Leticia. I'm just letting you know. Locked with us. When it comes to I-24 News Morning Edition, don't forget to check us out on all these social media network thingies, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, tune in tomorrow morning for another morning edition.
Tomorrow will be Wednesday. Let me
so thank you. Tomorrow will be Wednesday, where there will still be very beautiful, smart women on this show.
Not us, though.